Hey everybody, welcome to another Hanayama solution and review or thoughts. So for this particular video, I'm going to be showing you how to solve this level 6 puzzle called Nutcase. And it is indeed, I think, worthy of a level 6 designation. Like I've mentioned before, sometimes level 6s are assigned because the solution is very difficult to figure out, and other times it's because the execution is very challenging. And in some cases, it's a matter of both. And I think this is one of those examples where it is a matter of both. This really is going to drive you nuts, actually. And even knowing how to solve it, you can make a lot of mistakes that can make you look pretty amateurish. So hopefully, as I record this in one take, I'm not going to do anything to screw it up. And trust me, there's a lot of opportunities to do so. Okay, so the purpose of this puzzle is that you have this, I don't even know what to call this, like this, I guess, gigantic screw with 2 nuts at the end and 2 nuts in the middle. It's hollow, you can clearly see that. And in the middle of this hollow screw, you have a little tiny nut, which you can shake and can listen to, you can even see it. And the object, of course, is to take this apart and remove the little tiny nut out of the center. So on initial inspection, this is going to look impossible. There doesn't seem to be any way you can actually accomplish this because you have, of course, the nuts at the end holding it in place. And so there's no way to remove the nuts in the middle, so to speak, since the 2 at the end is locked in place. Now, of course, as with all of these puzzles, it's not impossible. There's a trick to it. And if you start fiddling with it enough times, you will quickly notice that the 2 nuts at the end and the screw in the middle actually can slide like so. So there is some give there. And if you were to look at the box that it comes in and it shows you the puzzle completely disassembled, you can clearly see at that point that these 2 can come apart. So it's not much of a spoiler to say that you know from the very beginning, pretty quickly just by analyzing it, that the 2 ends must somehow separate, that this screw is created by pieces interlocking together. The question, however, is why or what is preventing the 2 from sliding apart? And the answer, of course, is in the middle nuts. They are locking it together, right? And so, again, with a little bit of thought, it doesn't become too difficult to imagine that somehow you have to create a situation where these 2 nuts are no longer locking this entire screw together. And so it becomes very similar to another puzzle called Cylinder, where you are having to essentially move these 2 nuts little by little to find the perfect position where hopefully the screw can then slide apart. So I think that figuring out the solution is not too challenging. I mean, if you use logic, there probably isn't a whole lot of ways you can go about doing that. And there is quite a hint, because depending on how the puzzle comes, you can clearly see the space here, and you can clearly see the give. So that's a big hint, actually. Okay, but actually figuring out the position is really, really challenging, and it's difficult to do, and then difficult to do it in a fashion where you're going to remember so you can replicate it. So that's really sort of the point of the video, is to show you the position of these 2 middle nuts so that you can slide it apart. Okay, so your last chance to turn away before I tell you the position. Okay, ready? So here we go. As you can see, there is a line here where there is no movement, right? This is a fused piece. So this is all of one piece. And then if you keep turning it, you can now see that there's a smaller piece here. This is the bigger piece. This is the smaller piece. And then another small piece. And then another big piece where it's fused, and then the small piece. So your job is to look for a line, like so right here, that's not fused. So you don't want this line, you want this line, okay? But there's a couple of those. You're specifically, so this is the wrong line, okay? Because this is a crack between two pieces that have no cracks, right? So you see how there's no crack here, but there's a crack here, and then there's no crack here. You don't want that. You don't want this one. You want to look for a crack, which shows that you're able to, move it back and forth. You want to see this crack right below the piece with no crack, but if you go one more, you want to have a crack here as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so again, you don't want this one right here where there's a crack, no crack, crack, but if you keep turning, this is no crack again, right? You want no crack, crack, and crack, okay? And then you want to turn your attention to then this crack right below the no crack and above another crack. If you do that, you're going to turn the middle nuts near the end, and the reason will become apparent hopefully shortly. And then you're going to rotate the nut on my left so that the S of the word case is right above the crack. Okay, so hopefully you can see where my S is positioned, right about here. Don't lose that position. And then on the nut on my right, you want this edge right here. You want this edge, which is between the edge of the case, this edge above the E, and the other edge, which is right before the T of nut. You want the middle edge where there's no engraving. You want this one not to be at the line, but like a couple of millimeters above it. And if you've lined up the nuts like so, you will see that it very nicely opens up. You see that? Let's screw that up here. Okay. And of course, when you do that, the small nut immediately already falls out. So again, if you do it perfectly, you are going to be able to slide it with very little resistance. So again, take heed. The S right above that line, and then the edge between the parts of the bevel with no engraving a few millimeters above the line, and that should get you in this situation here. Okay? Okay, sorry about that. I have to readjust my camera just a little bit here. While I'm doing that, I need to get the little screw too. Okay. Now, a word. If you line it up and you find that this is not happening for you, you're not able to easily slide it, that's because you have it in the wrong orientation. You merely have to flip it 180, like so. And then you find the right line, and then you can pull it apart, okay? But in this case, I got lucky, and I happen to be in the right orientation, and that's the one that you use to open it up, okay? Okay, so once you slide it apart, it's typically pretty simple what you do next. You are then going to screw the middle nuts until it, screw the middle nuts all the way to the end. So here we go. Now this is the part that demands a little bit of caution because you can strip it pretty easily because again you're in a position where it doesn't want to listen. Okay, so go like that. It's kind of locked in place. You might want to, you might have to move it together just a little bit just to get it to start wriggling, okay? See what I mean by the technical difficulty of actually solving the puzzle even when you know the solution? Okay, so, come on. The middle nut is not catching to the screw. Oh, there it is. I can feel it now. You have to get to engage the actual thread, and that will allow you to be very careful. Do not force at all at this step. You want to slowly and gently turn it along the thread of the screw until it's all the way to the end, okay? So here we go. So we have achieved one nut to the end. Now this guy, same thing. Gently rotate it until it's on the other end. Now we're free and we should be able to separate the two parts with ease. And that is the solution of Nutcase. Let's now remove the nuts from the screw. One on this side. And then let's do it on the other side here. As you can see, there is a way to do it pretty easily. We're going to slide the puppy along. We have achieved that. Okay, so here's the middle nuts. And by examining the inside, now that you've disassembled everything, you can now appreciate how this puzzle works. You can see that there are threads only on certain portions of the inside of this nut, whereas the other portions are perfectly smooth. Same with this. And so you can see that if you put the smooth portion over the thread of the screw, like so, and there's a smaller smooth portion that corresponds to this threaded portion, you're going to be able to actually slide the nut without too much difficulty up and down. And that give is what allows you to separate the interlocking portions of the central screw. And obviously rotating it, you're gently rotating it to get to this particular magical position that will then allow you to slide apart, okay? So that's really the trick, and it can take a tremendous amount of time if you decide not to cheat and go on YouTube to find the position, to basically figure out the perfect position where this thing, is in the right position. It is going to be where it's supposed to be, and then again, you're using the S of the case. You can see that S is right where this this edge here is. This is it right there. So in any case, we've got it there. Let's put the small nut back into position. And then here, same thing. You want to get that big smooth portion over the big threaded portion. The small thread over the small smooth portion, and then this should drop just like that, and it does. And once you've gotten that in position, all you have to do is hold this, and then you lock it again, just like that. Now, once you lock it, you want to begin to move the nuts again. And I'm doing this very carefully because if you're careless and then you slide a little bit, this thing can get jammed both nuts can kind of get off kilter, and it can jam on the thread, and it becomes very difficult to unjam it. And you don't want to force it because you will, of course, then damage the threads, which would be a disaster. So I'm trying to be very careful about how I engage the thread with my nuts. And as you can see, we're now threading it together in the center, okay? Now, once it gets to the center, obviously the idea is to snap this thing back together. But in order to do that, of course, your nuts are now out of position, right? The two nuts in the center are out of position. You have to reposition it so, again, the smooth portions overline the right thread so there's no resistance when you slide it. And so you put them in the same orientation, case slightly right at the line right there, and then the edge between the two bevels a little bit above. And if you maintain that position, it should work. Okay, so it doesn't, which is not good. That means I have this somehow reversed. So it's simple. All you do is you turn it around, and then you look for the same thing. At that point, it would be this crack right here, right? No crack, crack, and then crack. So let's try it again. We'll put the S right here. And put the beveled edge right above it. Position does matter. You see? So doing that, you see that was the right position. You'll see it snap completely together. And then you just have to twist in the center, twist it in the center, and you have recreated the Nutcase puzzle. And you know you've done it right because if you keep turning, you will line up so that you'll have nut and case like so. Okay? So a nice puzzle, but very frustrating because when you don't know what you're doing, you often get the middle nuts essentially offset because the whole idea of the puzzle is that the two ends are going to pull apart, and so there has to be give on the threads. But that also makes it very easy for you to jam the nut, the internal thread of the nut on the wrong thread, and you're stuck. And you know there's some scary moments where you're going to feel like you're going to break the puzzle. So that's one thing. Another thing is that there's a variation of this puzzle where instead of putting in nut case, once you've taken it apart, you can actually flip each of the nuts upside down so that instead of nut case, you have case nut, okay? Which seems like a trivial, it seems like a trivial change when you already know how to take the puzzle apart and put it together. But it's anything but trivial because remember that the internal portion of this nut and those threads have directionality, meaning that if you were to flip it upside down, you would actually be engaging parts of the internal thread against the thread, which is not what you want. It makes sliding it apart much, much more difficult. And I did it one time actually when I first bought the puzzle. And I was able to do case nut and then actually re-separate, but it was tremendously difficult because it changes all of the locations. It changes the location where you have to place the nut, and so you have to go through again that the rotation, like literally a millimeter at a time to figure out the perfect position. It's not really quite perfect, and you have to slowly wriggle it apart. So even though I accomplished it, it was a lot of difficulty, and I don't want to ever do that again. And I think it does increase the chances you could damage the thread because, again, you're always wriggling it apart because, again, the threads don't line up perfectly with the smooth portion anymore if you flip this. So that's a challenge that you can try to play with. If that's the case, then this video and most YouTube videos will not be able to help you with that because, of course, your mark is no longer applicable if you've switched everything around. So again, let's see if we can find it for you. So you can see that this is the line I want to choose. You put the S right here. You put the bevel right here. It should be going to come apart. If it doesn't, that means you're not in the right orientation. You have to flip the orientation, right? And then you have to find the other portion. Put the S over here. Right there. Put that right over here. Come on. You see that? It works nicely. So again, hopefully that gives you a little bit of help in figuring out where things should be. Definitely worthy of a level 6 designation for Hanayama, because again, it takes quite a bit of ingenuity to figure out how this thing works, and then you got to actually be able to do it, and that's not inconsequential. So, hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, when we do another one of these Hanayama brain teasers, do take care.